and welcome back to the Fields of Anfield Road podcast, just episode 4 in the podcast's entire existence. So it's this brand new podcast is getting to life as we approach the start of the new season. And with me for today's episode is going to be all about Liverpool's greatest ever starting 11. And with me, I brought a guest on for his first time on the podcast, a fellow writer for Vavel. With me today, joining us, is fellow Liverpool fan Tyrese Maynard. Tyrese, good to have you on.
Yeah, it's good to be here, mate. Thank you.
No problem at all. And it's good to have you on because I noticed yourself, like me, we haven't got Liverpool accents. I want to ask you what made you a Liverpool fan, because if you had a Scouse accent, you'd be able to, it'd be obvious answer as to, why you picked Liverpool. But for you, like myself, a bit more of a different reason. What made you a Liverpool fan?
Yeah, so my dad's from Barbados originally, and so he moved over to England, and his first ever game we watched was Newcastle versus Liverpool FA Cup final. I forgot what year it was. So I grew up as a Liverpool fan, basically based on the fact that Liverpool won that game, funny enough. But ever since, I was from birth, I've been a Liverpool fan, had kids from young, and yeah, I'm just here today.
Fantastic stuff. I mean, I don't want to ask you for your age, but kind of what era are we talking about when you first watched Liverpool games? When was that sort of first encounter with Liverpool? What kind of year are we talking about?
Well, I was born in 2004, so you can sort of guess my age.
Right.
I'm 20. Obviously, I can't say like I was around watching from 2004 Champions League final, stuff like that, because obviously that's the year I was born. But I'd say I started taking interest in football probably when I was about 7, when I started playing football properly. And then ever since then, I've just been like linked in and obsessed with Liverpool as a whole.
So you sort of, that'll be what, 7 years old, 2004 ball, not make you what, 2011? So if you came in for sort of the rough parts of Liverpool, I mean, you had the Roy Hodgson days and Dalglish with the likes of Charlie Adam and all that there. It's maybe not the best start, but obviously you've been rewarded for your patience, because it's been a good last 5 years or so.
Yeah, I mean, obviously back then it was pretty rough. I mean, Dalglish won us the Carling Cup, but that probably only bit of success in that era. Signing players which I don't think sort of fitted the Liverpool like caliber of what we previously had. Obviously, you mentioned Charlie Adams, Stuart Downing, Maxi Rodriguez, there's loads of them. But like you said, patience obviously paid off, and we are where we are today.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a good few weeks, and obviously it's a new manager in charge, Slot. I mean, I don't know whether you've ever watched a Feyenoord game. I hadn't, so I can't personally say I've ever watched an Arne Slot game. So what are you feeling about the new management? Are you concerned at all that it's going to be a hard act to follow, or how are you feeling about sort of the new management in place?
Yeah, so obviously Klopp's at the caliber like to a different level compared to other previous managers. So it is going to take some time for Slot to come in and sort of win over the fans. Obviously, Klopp did a good job in his leaving speech where he got the fans sort of on Slot's side. And I think that sort of built a little bit of a relationship between us and Slot already. Based on his like press conferences and his recent interviews, he sounds quite similar to Klopp actually in the way he talks, and his sort of just his whole like demeanor sounds quite similar to Klopp. I've seen obviously the inside training videos as well. He seems quite hands-on with his approach. Obviously, as an ex-footballer himself, he sort of has that experience. But I see, like I said, a lot of similarities, and I feel like if that's the case, then I'm not expecting us to win the league next year. I think that'd be quite unrealistic unless we just defy the odds. But I think it could be a step in the right direction, basically.
Yeah, I think we can't really sit there and be expecting to challenge for league titles, but I think I can see it being something like a third place finish or fourth place finish, maybe get to a quarter final in one of the cups, and maybe get to the knockouts in the Champions League. I think that would be for first year with Slot. I think that would be a good progress. I think then you kick on, then you start to think about the year afterwards. Okay, now we start to compete, but I think you can't sit there and expect Slot to, with only really Dutch league as his experience, to go in and straight away bring success. I think, it's going to be, interesting first year, but I'm intrigued to see what it's going to be like. So if you haven't already guess from the episode title what I said at the start. We are doing our best ever Liverpool 11. Now, formation wise, I went for a classic 4-3-3. It's what I use on FIFA. It's what I would do if I was a manager. So for me, I thought, why not stick to tried and tested? But what kind of formation did you look at for your starting 11, Tyrese?
Yeah, so I've gone with I'd say a 4-2-4, in the sense that obviously the two midfielders and we have a massive caliber of attacking prowess. So I've sort of gone with the 4-2-4.
I almost went for that. I did think about it, but I thought, oh no, stick to the 4-3-3. And there's a reason why, and I'll explain later on why I went for the 4-3-3 in the end. Let's start off with probably, for us being young fans, probably the most easiest choice, goalkeeper, Alisson Becker. I mean, even my dad, my dad has been a fan since basically the glory days, been a fan for years, and he thinks that he might be the best keeper he's seen. He's also the modern day goalkeeper. He defines that. He set the benchmark for a lot of goalkeepers, and the amount of times over the years he's won his games through his performances, it's second to none. I mean, I loved Reina, but Reina was a lot more error prone, and I felt like Alisson was just so much more of a calmer presence, and he almost, it's hard to not really put Alisson as the keeper. I don't think there's anyone else really. I've had Jersey Dudek had his moment in 2005, but he was largely terrible for a lot of his time at the club. You think about Simon Mignolet, and he was, I think, okay, a bit underrated, but still not great. And then obviously we had Adam Bogdan out, was pretty awful, and obviously we all know what happened with Loris Karius. But yeah, I think Alisson's pretty easy, and I'm guessing he's your goalkeeper as well.
Yeah, he is 100%. I mean, the signings of him and Van Dijk changed our whole defense, like literally. I mean, like you said, Karius, he was all right, barring, and then it got to like the Champions League semi-finals where he made that mistake that nearly cost us. Lucky he didn't go in, where it slipped through his hands, and then from there it was sort of a downward spiral. But I think we went all out. Obviously, Alisson conceded 7 goals over 2 games against us, so it's a bit of an eyebrow raiser, I've got to say. But he's come in justified. He's won everything there is to win, bar the Europa League with us. Like you said, modern day goalkeeper to a T. Good with his feet. Obviously, saved us in multiple occasions. Even last year, there's a lot of times where our defence had let us down and he's bailed us out. So yeah, I went with Alisson. Pretty simple, that, to be honest.
I want to ask you about this because I had a debate with one friend about this. Do you think Liverpool would have signed Alisson? Say if we got to Champions League final 2018 in Kiev, and Karius has a great game, we win the final, seeing how Klopp was quite persistent with him throughout the season. Do you think we would have signed Alisson had Karius had a great final and not made the mistakes he did against Real Madrid?
No. To keep it simple with you, I think obviously Klopp's very patient with his players. He's not just going to drop you after one game. But I also think the price tag would have been quite a big deal as well. Obviously, we know FSG aren't the most willing to spend, or they'll spend, but they'll spend quite smartly. 75 million was a record at the time. So obviously, bringing in Alisson, I don't think it would have happened if Karius stayed consistent. And obviously, because 75 million is a lot of money in this day and age.
I agree. I think that it's telling that. I think if we want, because I think the friend I was talking about this, he thought that we've been planning it for a few months and it was sort of something going on behind the scenes. But I always think with that, like we would have signed him probably the first week. Like the Fabinho signing was done literally within days of the final loss to Madrid, and we had all through pre-season pretty much with with Danny Ward and Karius battling out, and there was talk of Danny Ward even potentially getting the spot, and I'm glad that didn't happen. And I think it was against Tranmere where he made those mistakes, and there was multiple games. I think it wasn't long. It was just a handful of days, I think, after that happened, that Klopp thought, you know what, just spend the money. And thank you, Coutinho, for that. And we've never looked back. But I always wonder. So I never really look back at that Madrid game as much PTSD. Well, certainly the one in 2018. I mean, there's games I look back on, like the 2014 against Chelsea with the Gerrard slip, or I look at the last day when 2022 when Villa were playing City, and I think there's some games I look back on with a lot of PTSD. But for this one, I actually almost view it as a good thing that happened to us. that mistake, because if we'd, as we've been saying just then, if we had a good game, if he had a good game, we won the Champions League final, Carragher had his head held high, Klopp would have probably kept him. He'd have been probably more loyal to him, like he has been with Milner and Henderson and Fabinho when they were maybe getting towards their last legs in their last season or two. Moving on to the back four, so we'll go with you first this time, Tyrese, for your right back.
I'll be so honest. I asked my dad about this one because Trent, obviously, we know Trent's amazing. He's obviously top, got the most assists in the Premier League history as a defender. His ball playing abilities out of this world. Obviously, come through the academy as well, so he's a scouser through and through. So I did ask my dad, and my dad went with Phil Neal.
Ooh, okay, yeah.
No, I can't say I know too much about Phil Neal. Obviously, I'm 2004 baby. I wasn't around in the 70s and 80s, but he was telling me that he was one of the most decorated players in Liverpool history with 23 trophies. Obviously, that was our glory period. So obviously, everyone had to be to a certain level in order to keep that consistency up for that long time. But so he went with Phil Neal. He was on about how like he's one of the most reliable players he's seen, a born leader. He's just like that guy. He's just the guy who obviously helped spearhead that team to glory throughout.
Now, I must admit, like I have gone for more players I've seen approach to my starting 11, which I know it's a bit of a cop out because we are doing it all time rather than our lifetime. But I have got one player in my team that wasn't from when I was alive. But yeah, I thought you look at that team from the 70s and 80s, and you could easily put a lot of players in that team. But I have gone for the more modern day approach. That's why I've gone for Trent. For me, again, my lifetime in Liverpool, I like Stephen, and he was very solid, but he was never a world beater. Arbeloa, he was really good, but I think Trent's just a new level. I mean, I know he does sometimes maybe pull my hair out with his defensive ability, and I don't think his Euros has helped the case midfield. But especially those 2-3 years he had where we challenged for Champions Leagues and league titles, where we were one game away from winning a league and Champions League double with 100 points unbeaten. That period we had, that those 18 months to 2 years where it's the best I've ever seen Liverpool play. It's the best in terms of football we've played and the best we've looked in my whole lifetime. And Trent was a big part of that. Local lad, scoring wonderful free kicks and the ability to pick out a pass from seemingly nowhere. For me, I've got to put Trent in there for many reasons. But yeah, going on to the rest of my back four, I'll give my centre-back partnership together. I've gone for Carragher and Van Dijk. I just think that Van Dijk, is the best centre-back I've ever seen play for Liverpool. He was just, I think, 7 votes away from winning Ballon d'Or. In 1 year, he was, I think in his prime, there's a case for being one of the best ever centre-backs for purely being in their prime. I mean, career-wise, there's probably players you look at otherwise that probably have better careers. But I think for one-on-one game, you pick any defender in the world in their prime, he's got to be in that conversation because he was, before that injury especially, unplayable. And there's a stat going around that no one ever dribbled past him. And it's just, he still is now a very, very cool and calm presence, and he still is really good. But I think that period he had, a bit like Trent in those 18 months, 2 years, he was the best centre back in the world by, I think, a lot of distance. And I've gone for Carragher alongside him. I love Daniel Agger, but I think for my team, I wanted obviously Van Dijk on the left-hand side, and that's where Agger played. So Carragher on the right-hand side, he'd go. I'm fully aware that maybe he wasn't the best defender in the world, but I think he's kind of played that his passion to win the game for Liverpool just gave him that extra 20-30%. I'll always remember that Istanbul game where he was running on empty and he had cramp and he was still, giving his all and, stopped it being, 4-5-0 at one point. And that was probably his career defining game. And and obviously I've had the pleasure of meeting him once. That was a really cool experience. And he is someone that I looked up to as a kid. And I feel like I've got to put him in this team somewhere. But who are you putting as your back to?
Yeah, I couldn't really disagree with what you just said at all. I went Van Dijk and Carragher as well. I mean, Van Dijk, pretty much the same as Alisson, 75 million at a time, most expensive FIFA defender. But that seems like a bargain, like in this day and age. I mean, I've mentioned it before. He's won every trophy there is to win, bar the Europa League. And that just shows his importance. We were quite ropey at the back before he came in. And even, I mean, he scored in his debut against Everton. Don't get much better than that. But, like, he's just, I don't know, he's just a leader. Like, there's obviously the stat going around about him not being dribble pass. He was inevitable until that injury, which is unfortunate. But saying that, his levels hasn't really dropped that much. Maybe speed wise, yeah, fair enough. But he's just been like the staple of our defence, and he's held that defence together. I mean, we've had Matip, Joe Gomez, who partnered him, and Konate, who partnered him, and they don't look out of place next to him. Like, they're never really under any pressure at all. And I think that's just because his calmness, like, can just calm down the whole back line, just keep it all together. And it shows, obviously, we've come close to winning the trophy, the Prem 2-3 times. And I think that wouldn't be the case without Van Dijk. And I don't think any other defender in the world can do what Van Dijk has done and will continue to do. And then with Carragher, I mean, he's scouts through and through, isn't he?
Yeah, Mr. Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, he gives us all, no matter what. You mentioned the Champions League final, and that is probably his most important game. I mean, without him, who knows what would have happened? I mean, throwing himself in front of the ball, putting his body on the line multiple times over and over. I think he might not, like you said, he might not be the best defender defensively, but he's willing to give his all for the badge, and that's what you need. You don't want defenders who, are just luxury defenders. You want players who will step up in the big games and do what they can to ensure that we win.
I agree. And it's go back as well to mentioned before about not having much, that much PTSD about the Madrid game and it helping us probably get Alisson. I remember that the 3-3 against Sevilla and the 4-0 against Tottenham, especially. I think when you're taking off Lovren before even half time happens, I always think that must have been the point where Klopp looked at it and goes, right, we've got to just spend the money and pay them what they want, because it wasn't long after that we went out and and got Van Dijk for Liverpool, and obviously he's changed things completely. I think that it's a shame that he wasn't there for 6 months when he had Coutinho as well, but we wouldn't have bought Coutinho if you wouldn't have bought Van Dijk if we hadn't sold Coutinho. So there's a reason why it's happened, but I think can't thank Coutinho enough really for I think as good as he was, we had a way better chance of winning trophies with Van Dijk and Alisson compared to Coutinho. So how his career's gone since leaving Liverpool, it's he must look back and regret it a lot. Although I do think at the same time he was played out of position at Barcelona, that didn't help. But at the same time, he must massively regret that move. Moving on to left back with you, Tyrese, for your left back choice.
I mean, it's inevitable, really. It's Andy Robertson, the Flying Scotsman. I mean, for 8 million, it's a weird signing. Obviously, we had Alberto Moreno, and he was good going forward, shocking defensively, which was further demonstrated against Sevilla. I mean, that game still haunts me to this day, funny enough. But I mean, 8 million from relegated Hull side at the time, people again raised their eyebrows at it. It was a bit of like, okay, maybe he's brought in for depth, but he's coming and he's done wonders for us. I mean, his partnership of Trent and like himself, obviously pushing each other, not really like linking up as much, but pushing each other to do what they've done. Obviously, that's a massive deal, especially in how successful we've been in this era. Not really a goal scorer as such, but he has also pushed Trent to like the assist threshold that they both hit. So that's pretty self-explanatory, to be honest. Obviously, we've had John Arneris, who was quality. Obviously, had a rock over shot on him, but I don't think he quite put up the levels that Andy Robertson has done on a consistent basis.
I agree. Risa was good. I liked Fabio Radio, but they're not on Robbo's level. I mean, look about the all-time assists for a defender in Premier League history, and it's the top two are Trent and Robertson. And I think as well the 4 seasons with the most assists are Trent and Robbo in those 2 seasons, 18-19 and 19-20. It's incredible achievement, and it's not really much of a comparison when you had Twitter's likes of Paul Konchesky playing left back for your club. It's not, and Mediano and Sue. It's not really you thought it couldn't get any worse, and then Robbo comes in, and also Moreno as well. He was, we mentioned just then, he was pretty terrible. And again, I remember there's a while actually. His first few months he wasn't playing for Liverpool, Robert. I remember Moreno was there. I remember he got an injury, and I can't think who it was against. Maybe Sparta Prague or Spartak Moscow. And Robertson came on, and that was pretty much the end of Moreno's career at Liverpool right there. And Robertson never really looked back. And I don't think anyone thought when he signed from Hull, for £8 million, that he's going to become, as you say, as he's going to become the player he was. So, I think as well he almost defines Klopp's football he plays. I think the kind of the pressing and the relentlessness and the gegenpressing, as he likes to call it, of it. I think Robertson defines that. I think nothing defines that more probably than his pressing against Man City in that 4-3. Yeah. That was just that almost. I think he almost defines Klopp. I think he's a bit of a joker. He likes to wind up opposition, but I think he almost defined Liverpool's Klopp kind of way. And he's been there's questions whether maybe he should be made captain or talk about it, but I think Van Dijk was the right choice. I think Robertson should be at least the third choice, if not second choice captain for Liverpool. I think he is someone that the team, from all accounts, the players look up to, and he's like one of the go-to guys to talk to about stuff. So for me, Robertson. Again, I think the back four is pretty easy. I think you can make it a case for the other centre back and right back as well. But I think certainly Van Dijk, Alisson, and Robertson are pretty locked in. But it's where it gets interesting now. The midfield. Now this is going to be interesting because we've got different formations. Of course, you went for 4-2-4. I went for 4-3-3. So we'll go back with you, Tyrese, for your 2 out of your 4-2-4.
Yeah. So I've gone with Gerrard. I mean, that's the banker, really. And then I went with Graham Souness. Now, I'd obviously never watched Graham Souness play, but again, he was in that 70, 80 era team. And I was speaking to my dad about him because obviously he gets a lot of slander for his punditry. And people sort of like downplay his importance to football. But I think the way my dad was describing him, he was just this tenacious, hard-hitting midfielder who, like Carragher, would die for the badge. I mean, he had a successful career. Obviously, he was in the glory days. But I think he's sort of what football's missing today. I know he was a bit of a hard man and maybe went over the top, but I think the passion and the willingness to do anything, again, to succeed, I think that's what we're missing out on in this day and age. I went with Souness. And then Gerrard I ran out of superlatives for Gerrard, to be honest. I mean, he had chances to move away, all sorts. Mourinho was obviously obsessed with him at Chelsea and Madrid. He was apparently going to join United at some point. But he stuck with us, and maybe his career could have panned out in a better way, but I don't think his legacy would have panned out in a better way if he moved on. I keep going back to the AC Milan final, the first one, and he quite literally dragged that team by the scruff of its shoulders and made something happen out of nothing. I mean, the header was world class, and his driving to the box that won us a penalty for the second goal was also world class. So I think Gerrard, I know he's not won a Premier League title and people bang on about that, Slippery G, all this stuff, but I think any of them fans that do that, like, would happily take Gerrard. So it's quite obviously contrasting, but I think there's not really much. I could go on about Gerrard all day, but I think you get the general gist of it. He's obviously incredible, obviously scouser through and through as well. stayed with us until he's about to retire, went to obviously America, but he is just Mr. Liverpool. He is the spearhead of our club, arguably one of our greatest ever players.
And just I want to say as well, first of all, I forgot to say at the start of the episode, welcome to those watching on YouTube. It's our first episode we're doing on the YouTube channel, our first episode released on this. Do check it out. And if you are watching on YouTube, you can see from behind me that you can see exactly what I think of Steven Gerrard. I'm not giving the best example. My chair's not swinging the way I wanted to do, but yeah, you can see there just the kind of what Gerrard means to me. I mean, yeah, you think about everyone's got a sporting idol, whatever sport you like, whatever team you support in whatever sport, and that mine is Gerrard. I mean, I think when I first was a Liverpool fan, it was Michael Owen was the guy. It was like 2002, 3 sort of ish time. So I remember when my first Liverpool shirt was a Michael Owen shirt, home one. I remember, yeah, he obviously left Madrid, and then that's when Gerrard sort of my love for him began. Really, it wasn't long after that. Then he had the Istanbul final, and of course, a year later, what I think is his crowning moment is the FA Cup final. What is to my day still my favourite ever Liverpool goal, my favourite goal in football in general. That one to make it 3-3. I mean, yeah, that performance alone was unbelievable. I mean, 2 goals and an assist. And going back a year as well, he's playing right back at one point against Milan. He was playing all over the shop. And yeah, it's a shame he never won the Premier League. And people always like to throw that in when he mentioned the whole Scholes, Lampard, Gerrard thing. But I always think on that basis, you're going to have Anderson over Gerrard in your all-time 11. You're going to have Nani over Mohamed Salah. Or you're going to have, Carvalho over Van Dijk because he won more leagues. I think sometimes people can get almost too fixated on trophies. I think obviously there's, if you're part of a team that wins, if you're a staple holder of a team that wins multiple titles, like Puyol and Piqué and Busquets with Barca, I think that's obviously they're very good players. But I think people seem to always fall back on his lack of trophies where, you guarantee if he'd gone to Chelsea, he would have won so much more trophies. I think, if you put him in that Man U team instead of Scholes, he would have won the same amount of trophies. And that's why I would clearly put him ahead of those two in that debate. And as well, I think he said it before in an interview that for him, winning 5 trophies in Liverpool means a lot more than winning 15 with Chelsea or this team or that team. So I think, if you win trophies with your boyhood team, which despite popular belief, it was his boyhood team. I think it means a lot more. Like, I'm from a very small town in Wales, and if there's ever a situation where I was playing for this team in the Premier League, that would mean a lot more to me than say winning it with Arsenal or something like that. So I think, Mourinho tried to get him so many times, but he stayed loyal, and he obviously is for me the best player. I think most talented player goes to someone else, but I think the best player I've seen in Liverpool is Gerrard for the longevity he had there and all the moments he had, not just the 2 finals, but I remember there was an Inter Milan game in the Champions League, I think it was 2007, where he just scored a goal from 30 yards out of nowhere. You think of the Middlesbrough goal, goals against Man City later on in his career, and obviously we all know what happened towards the end of his time, which that haunts me still to this day. And it's really, that game actually changed me from being a optimist to a pessimist. I was so confident winning the league. I was so confident we were going to do it, and that just killed me that season. But it's no shock from saying all that Gerrard, he's in my team. I went for him as one of the 3. I think it's pretty obvious for me. Club legend, being my childhood hero, absolutely goes my team. Apart from that, I was torn between 2 players for my holding midfield part of the 3. I was torn between Mascherano and Fabinho. I think both of them were amazing in their holding roles. And I've gone for Fabinho because, frankly, I enjoyed watching him more. I think Mascherano did leave on a slightly sour note. Obviously went on to win a treble at Barcelona, so I can't really argue against it and won multiple Champions Leagues. But Fabinho for me was part of, obviously Mascherano was great, and I just realised I was talking about trophies not being a factor, but the fact that Fabinho's been there for some great moments winning titles. About the Man City goal when he won the Premier League and, scoring the goal on the last game we played before we were crowned champions. And, he was part of the greatest part of my time being a fan has been that 2018 to 2020 sort of period. And he was a big part of that. So I think there's a lot of nostalgia involved with that. And I think there's a lot of that part of it makes me choose him over Mascherano. For me, he had to go in somewhere. And then finally, I thought about Alonso. I kind of think of him more as a Madrid player than a Liverpool player. So I've gone for an old player. Some say the best ever to play for the club. I've gone for Dalglish. I thought he's a striker, but apparently he also played a bit of attacking mid back in the day. So I'm going to put him as my cam. Gerrard is sort of the 8 of Fabinho as a 6. I think Dalglish, from what I've seen, he's part, obviously what I've read and seen, he's part of the, the greatest period of our whole club's history, scored important goals in finals, and he is seen by a lot of people as the greatest ever Liverpool player. So had to get him in there somewhere. So yeah, that was my midfield 3. So you've given your 2. Now we're going to both give our right and left midfielders. He's obviously got, I'm assuming, left and right wing in your 4. I've got a right and left wing in my front 3. So for you, Tyrese, who is your right and left wingers?
Right, so right wing, Mohammed Salah, the Egyptian king. That didn't really take much debating at all. I think he obviously will go back a few years before he signed for us. He was at Chelsea and he wasn't given a chance at all. Sort of scapegoated, just forced out by Mourinho. It's not really fair on him, to be honest, but I think his persistence to get back obviously was good at Fiorentina at first, moved to Roma, and then we signed him for a very, very reasonable fee of around 30 million, a bit higher. But and since then he came and he's amazing. He's incredible. I mean, broke the record for the most goals in a 38 game season with 32 from right wing, bearing in mind, which is pretty impressive in itself. I can again won everything there is to win for us, and even then he's just been Mr. Consistent. I mean, when we needed a goal, when we needed that bit of magic, he's the one who's popped up. Obviously, we'll talk about the City goal where he's gone and sent everyone on his little mazy run. Like, that's impressive. And then to finish it off with his right foot, beautiful, picturesque. Then the week after, he went to Vicarage Road against Watford. Pretty much done the exact same. Not exactly the exact same, but the solo little bit of skill, sit a defender down, slot it home. Again, picturesque. And even I'll go and talk about the Roma game. Obviously against his old club. Funny enough, it was against Alisson as well. And in a big game like that, where you need a big player to shine, he was the guy who did it. Obviously scored an absolutely beautiful finesse shot from outside the box, or maybe just inside, and then obviously chipped Alisson with a deft finish as well. And it's just moments like that where you have to just understand that he is probably, arguably, one of the best wingers to ever grace the Premier League. People do have that debate, and I think it's justified. So yeah, Mohamed Salah, he's him.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. Really, think about it now about the fact that for £35 million. I mean, he came in seen as a Chelsea flop, and then he's gone out and done that. I mean, that first season especially was just nothing I've ever seen. Obviously, Haaland's done something since, probably has beaten him for the greatest ever. Well, apart from one player I'm going to mention later on, but certainly Salah's one of the greatest ever Premier League seasons at 17-18, that's right. It's a shame about the injury in the final, but, and obviously now he's declined a little bit, but you can't argue for the whole 7 years being at the club, 6-7 years, whatever it's been. He's had at least 20 goals and 20 assists in all competitions. I mean, again, to do that as a winger, I mean, before he came in, I don't remember many people were scoring 20 goals or more from the wing. I mean, Hazard, I think, is one of the best ever sort of most naturally talented wingers I've seen in Premier League history. He was so he was naturally talented on the left wing, but he never got the goals that Salah did. And now it's sort of almost raised the bar. Now sort of people are expecting wingers to score 20 goals a year each year, and I think it's sort of he has raised the bar, and he set the standard, and we've had pretty much. I mean, he's my right winger as well. But there's not been many really great right wingers in Liverpool history, certainly in my lifetime. I mean, I loved Luis Garcia, but he was nowhere near Salah's level. Think about since then we had Mark Gonzalez for a year. That was pretty bad. think about before Salah. I can't even think who was in before Salah at right wing. That's Mane was there for a year before he moved to left wing, and before that, really are struggling to find many great right wingers. I mean, Lallana played there for a lot of time. Coutinho did a bit of stint at right wing. There's been a lot of years where we've actually had a lot of poor play. I mean, Dirk Kuyt was really good in big games, but he wasn't the best footballer. Yossi Benayoun was underrated, but again, these players just aren't on Salah's level, and I think Salah might be the one of the easiest choices on the whole list, on the whole of our starting 11s. I mean, unbelievable. And he, big games always turns up. I mean, he got albeit a penalty, got a goal in the Champions League final. You think about, there was a while where he didn't get a goal against Man U at all, and now he's got so many goals against Man U.
Yeah.
And I want to say he's got more yellow cards for taking shirts off celebrations against Man U than anything else. There's something about that, isn't there, about his stat about taking off shirts against Man U or something like that. It's just unbelievable. And yet you can always count on him. You think about each sort of title challenging season we had, and he was sort of, for the most part, every big game he had against Man City or against this team or that team, he was always there delivering. The goal against Man U, I always remember. I think that was the moment where we sort of realised we're actually going to win the league here, and there was no sort of coming back. And even the goal against Man City a few months earlier, and I think, it's just he's been there. Like same as Fabinho, been there for a lot of my best moments as a Liverpool fan. And he's been the life and soul of our attack, and part of the greatest front three I've ever seen at Liverpool, certainly with Mane, Firmino, and Salah. And he has been, probably the best right winger in world football. Obviously Mbappe's come in, and obviously Messi's been around, but I think certainly in Premier League wise, I've not seen anyone better than Salah at right wing, probably ever in Premier League. You think all the great players that played, none of them really were right wing. Henry was left wing / striker. Ronaldo was left wing / striker. I think it's really quite an easy. I mean, Beckham was right in field, but he wasn't not on Salah's level. So that's pretty easy for me. But then back to you for your left winger.
Yeah. So I've gone with Sadio Mane. Again, you mentioned the front three, and it seemed to be where Salah stopped scoring, Mane would start scoring, which I found quite funny. But I think Mane is very underrated, I've got to say. I mean, fans love Salah. Mane does get love, but it's not on the level of Salah. But I feel like they both contributed so much to our success. Obviously, I'll mention the goal against Bayern Munich with that touch around Neuer. I think any other winger, especially our pass wingers, I don't think they would have had like the tenacity or even the audacity to take it round one of the best keepers ever, and then to just chip it over. Like there's stuff like that where you realise that he's different to the rest of them. Coutinho could have got a shout. Obviously, you mentioned him playing on the left wing. Obviously known for his screamers, his finesse shots, all sorts. And then John Barnes. Obviously, I wasn't born when John Barnes played, but I can acknowledge that he was unbelievable with the ball at his feet. But for me, just Mane, he obviously signed from Southampton, had a really good season. Obviously, scored the quickest hat trick in Premier League history. But I just think, he's just, again, for another bargain, he's just amazing. I mean, his partnership with Robertson down that side, both just willing to run constantly. That goal against City, it's just moments like that where you realise, you've got something great, and that's exactly what it was.
Mane for me is one of those players where he you don't realise what you have till he's gone. You talk about the loving of Salah, and I think you always heard on the stands, whether you're at games or whether you're watching on TV, you always heard the Salah chants and the Firmino chants, and I rarely heard Mane chants being sung, and it wasn't even like a commonly known song really. His song was nowhere near as used as everyone else, and and I think that probably played a big part in him leaving the end, with the fact that he wasn't getting recognition that maybe others were. The fact that we had the Ox and Keita on more money than him at one point wage wise. Obviously, he's again another player who's not really done much since leaving Liverpool. But I think he was so. I think looking back at now where it's gone since he's left, really so crucial towards our attack, because from what you're saying is completely right about Salah wasn't turning up, Mane or Firmino would, and
Yeah.
I always think back to that game against City early this year, and there's chances for Luis Diaz. Every single one of them, Mane scores. Every single one of them, he would score, and he was just so good. And I think we miss him. I think a lot more than we maybe thought we would, and I think he has been an incredible miss. And I remember those, he played right wing at the start, moved to left wing, and eventually he was playing false nine. I think that's last 6 months of the quadruple season. At times, he could play any of the front three and he would excel. And I think he was, for all these I'm just saying, he is my left winger as well. And I think that he is someone that I think we miss. I think a lot more than we realised. Yeah, he was unbelievable. Now finishing off my front three, I've gone for Luis Suarez. Now I love Torres. I love Torres and Firmino more than Suarez as players to watch, but Suarez was. I did allude to it earlier in this episode that I think he is the most naturally talented player I've seen in Liverpool. What he could do with the ball was like nothing I've ever seen. I think in terms of watching him both in person and on TV, just the talent he's got. I mean, Thiago, the same thing. You watch Thiago play, and it's like you can tell this person was born to play football. And Suarez, the same thing. And think about that season he had 13-14, top scorer in the league, scored so many goals, missed the first 5-6 games as well.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't take a single one from the penalty spot. They were all open play goals. Well, maybe a couple of set pieces, but that season he had, I don't think I've seen any season like it. Since Salah's season was close. I think the goals he scored as well, Suarez. I mean, the Norwich hat-trick he scored, I mean, which one? But the one he scored in that 13-14 season at Anfield, and I think it was early December, maybe late November. It was a night game. I remember it just, all 3 or 4 goals were all just absolutely screaming. You think about the free kick he scored, I think that was his 4th. The lob from 30-40 yards, just every goal was just unbelievable. And he had almost like a goal in a month competition by himself. And just unbelievable. And I think that I think Firmino and Torres, I love them, and obviously Firmino was a big part of the big success we had in recent times. But I can't ignore Suarez. And obviously you think about like Ian Rush and Robbie Fowler. Robbie Fowler probably is the most natural goal scorer ever in Liverpool history. But again, I think Suarez just had, I don't know, just an amazing year and a half, 2 years. And I'm fully aware that I said Alonso was no more than for Madrid, and Suarez probably had his best time in his career probably at Barcelona. But yeah, last season he had was just out of this world, and he has to be in my front three.
Yeah, so obviously I went for 2 strikers to finish off my front 4. Suarez was one of them. Obviously signed by K. Dalglish, had a bit of a ropey start. He's missing a few chances here and there. But the 13-14 seasons where he kicked on, obviously, we were so close to winning that title. Obviously, we didn't. But I think him and Sturridge up top in that season, they complement each other perfectly. The caliber of goals that Suarez was scoring was incredible. I mean, I can go name the header from just outside the box against West Brom. That's one of them. You don't see that every day, do you? He'll score free kicks for the fun of it. Obviously likes to lob John Rudy, poor guy, but it's just how it is.
He must hate him so much.
Yeah, 100%. Norwich fans must absolutely despise the man. Obviously he's quite a controversial figure, but I don't think there's anyone in this world who can say he wasn't as good as everyone knows he was. You can hate the man all you want, but you can't say he's not a class player. Obviously moved to Barca, which obviously hurt us a lot because we didn't really replace him either. Obviously, we brought in like Balotelli, Barini, all them lot. But I think even at Barca, you can see how good he was, and probably arguably the best striker of our generation.
Like our out strikers, I think you think about obviously Messi, Ronaldo was more of like sort of they could play on the right and the left, and Lewandowski's been good and Benzema's been good and all that. But I think Suarez is just to do that at Liverpool and do Barcelona and win a treble and be part of that great front three. And then he went to Atletico Madrid, won a title there as well. I mean, he's just obviously Uruguay as well. I think won a Copa America was unbelievable.
Yeah. So really, that wasn't really up to debate as such. Obviously, there have been so many good strikers. You mentioned Firmino before. Obviously, I wouldn't say he's a striker, more of a nine, but I've just got to shout out Firmino because I think he's one of the biggest players that we've missed, and especially last year. There's games where we weren't scoring goals, and Firmino wasn't really a goal scorer as such. He at the start he contributed a lot to goals, but by the end he was sort of interlinking, making things happen up top. But I feel like if you see like Nunes miss chances, that I reckon Firmino would score. That's not me hating on Nunes at all because I love him as a player, but I just feel like Firmino is one of the players that we definitely did miss and sort of went under the radar. But my other striker is Dalglish. Obviously, you put him in midfield, which I actually did see before I made my list. But I mean, King Kenny says it all. Really, he was the king of Liverpool. He was incredible. Like I said with the others that I haven't seen watch play, but just the way that he's so like renowned, even today at the club, he's obviously a part of the glory era. He's just incredible. Um, so I think that wasn't really up to much debate either. Obviously, one of our best ever strikers, if not the best striker we've ever had. Obviously, shout out to Robbie Fowler as well. Definitely one of our like most instinct strikers who can make something happen out of nothing. Also, like Ian Rush, obviously great player. You have Hunt. There's loads of them, obviously etched in our history book. But I think Head Dalglish just sort of puts the cherry on top of the cake. Like I think he's just like the pinnacle of our success.
Couldn't agree more. And I think he's like a real. Basically, he defines Liverpool. I mean, think about what he went through with Hillsborough and going to all the funerals and everything else. Being boom back to manager again. He's almost the face of Liverpool. I think he's just the most important person. And I think Bill Shankly is the most important person in Liverpool's history. But I think Dalglish is in that conversation for the next or two or three most influential people to be at Liverpool. I think he did so much for the club off and on the field. And he had to be, even though neither of us saw him play. He was well retired when we both were born, but unbelievable. And I think he's also won a Premier League at Anfield with Blackburn as manager as Blackburn. Obviously, you'll remember that last day. Obviously, is the first title race when I was born. Obviously, I was 6 months at this point in '95 when they won the league. But yeah, so he actually until we won the league in 2020, he was the only Liverpool player to ever win the Premier League at Anfield. And obviously, he was there as well when he won the Premier League title in 2020, which I view personally as my favourite ever Liverpool memory. I don't know whether he was the Champions League or Premier League, but he was there for that as well. And he obviously signed Henderson, he signed Suarez. Obviously, he signed a lot of bad players as well. Don't get me wrong, but he signed two really crucial players. Really, when he was probably a bit past it as a manager. So I think he deserves a lot of love, and he is Mr. Liverpool.
Yeah, 100%. I can't debate that at all. I mean, he came back as manager, won us a Carling Cup, which people play down the League Cup a lot, but with the way that we were, obviously nearly went to administration, obviously trying to rebuild up. K. Dalglish sort of took us by the reins and obviously won us a trophy and sort of pushed us in the right direction as such. Obviously, like you said, signing Suarez and Henderson, huge signings, huge players. Obviously, Henderson went on to win again everything, captain the club for years. But everything's just Kenny Dalglish. He's obviously, like you said, a leader on and off the pitch. He's done so much for the club in terms of Hillsborough, and he's just a legend. He definitely up there as one of the most influential players, managers, members of the club, just in general.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And that is our teams done. So just to recap our starting lineups, I went for 4-3-3 of Alisson in goal, the back four of Trent, Carragher, Van Dijk and Robertson, Midfield three of Fabinho, Gerrard and Dalglish, with the front three of Salah, Suarez and Mane, whereas Therese went for a 4-2-4 with Alisson in goal. The back four of Phil Neal, Jamie Carragher, Van Dijk and Robertson. The two would be Gerrard and Souness, and then the four would be Salah on the right, Mane on the left, and then a front two of Dalglish and Suarez. That is where we'll end episode 4 today. So thank you all who are listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those who are watching on YouTube. And let us know in the comments, whether it's on podcast, whether it's on YouTube, what you think of our teams and which one you think would win in a hypothetical one-off game. Huge thank you, Therese, for coming on, making your debut on the show today.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been a great little talk with you as well. Obviously, I will be interested to see what the fans have to say about our teams. I reckon mine wins, but that's that.
Well, only one way to find out. Do let us know in the comments. And for those who want to try and find you on social media, if they are watching this and like what you said, where can they find you on socials?
Yeah, so my Twitter is Tyrese Journo 1_ something like that. But you should be able to find me on there. I'm also a writer on Vavel, so if you're ever looking at any Liverpool news, you can find me also on Tyrese Journo 1. That's basically all the social medias I use at the moment. But you can also follow Anfield Central, which is an Instagram account which I do run at the moment. But I do appreciate you giving me the platform and obviously letting me come on and talk. So thank you for that.
No problem at all. We will have you on again, I'm sure. We have talked about already doing a worse Liverpool 11 episodes. That might be coming in the next few weeks. And also then, throughout the season, we'll get you on, I'm sure, from time to time and again to talk all things Liverpool and what's going on, how we're doing. Hopefully, we're doing good, but you never know. But yeah, in the meantime, this has been the Fields of Anfield Road podcast. I have been, as ever, your host, Annie Davis, with guest today, Tyrese Maynard, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you.